Hey, welcome to the Spector Creative channel, and that's me. Well, it's a still image of me from a few years ago. Not me talking right now. This is just a voiceover. But I have been in the toy industry for many, many years. My name is Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, and despite rumors to the contrary, I did not just, fall off the toy industry map when I left Mattel in 2014. I stayed in the toy industry, and I worked for a variety of companies, from family-owned companies like Jada, helping to relaunch their metals line and create the Nanos metal line, which is still one of the coolest toy lines I think I've ever gotten to work on, or other large medium companies like Jax, where I worked on their Big Figs line. And one of the big reasons that I've started this channel on YouTube is to explain a lot of the why behind the toy industry. And yes, I've taken my fair share of gruff for that because, well, some people don't like hearing news that they don't emotionally agree with. It's called cognitive dissonance. But I've also had amazing experiences, and one of the best was when I helped get a unmade playset, Castle Grayskull in Motu Classics, from a simple cardboard model, and fans supported it, and it became an actual plastic product that Mattel was able to sell. This was an amazing experience, and it was very, very different from the standard model that Mattel used to sell toys to consumers. Most of the time, they're not selling them to consumers, they're selling them to retailers. Mattel is a wholesaler, right? They sell toys to Walmart and Target. Target sells them to consumers. So selling them directly to collectors was a different model, and it did increase margins because you're bypassing retail. Hasbro has a very similar program. They have Haslab, where they create giant items and sell them directly to collectors. How do I know they make more margin? Well, because, again, they're bypassing retail, so they get to absorb that margin. It's, common sense, not business insight. All right, well, time is money, and money is honeybees, and companies aren't going to invest in these giant projects that literally cost $500,000 to $1 million in tooling without a guaranteed backer. And recently, Haslab revealed their first stretch goal for their new Black Series Rancor figure. And there was a lot of mixed reaction to this. So I want to kind of explain it in terms of how toy industry accounting works. So this was the stretch goal, right? A Gamorrean guard from the Black Series, which a lot of us already have. I have 3 of them. Yeah, what are you going to do about it? I like Gamorrean guards. And that he's not really different from the retail release. In fact, he doesn't even have any new accessories. And a lot of people online, in my comment section, on different fan forums, are saying, this is not cool, Hasbro. We already have this toy. How could you possibly make this the stretch goal? That's like, adding insult to injury. Kick us while we're down, right? Offer us a Gamorrean guard when we already have it? I mean, granted, he's on a new package. A lot of people are saying, well, it should be a new figure like Ula, who honestly would be a 100% tooled figure. I don't think there's parts you could use from any other existing Black Series figure. Maybe like, the head tentacles from Hera? Well, probably not. They're attached to her head. Or the Rancor Keeper. Again, probably 100% tool because he's got a unique body type. And a unique figure is going to be about $100,000. So asking for a unique figure means you're asking Hasbro to spend another $100,000 on this Haslab project. So I want to explain why the first tier cannot be something like that, like a fully tooled figure that a lot of people were expecting or hoping for or counting on. And it does have to do with basic accounting principles. And I'm not going to go too deep into accounting, but I'm going to do a very big overview. Now, for the most part, the Haslab items, the tier unlocks, have been, so far, a re-release. Maybe they get a new stand, like this Silver Surfer figure, but he's essentially the same figure we've gotten twice at Walgreens already. Again, I know he's got a stand, and I know some items like the Sentinel had more. But for the most part, the first tier unlock is a re-release, and then each additional tier unlock, you seem to get more and more tooling. So then we got Nova, then we got Terrax, then we got Dr. Doom's head, so more tooling for each tier unlocked. But the first tier, for the most part, not 100% of the time, has been a non-tooled figure. Same thing with the Sail Barge. They only had one add-on, which was the Yak Face figure. And while he hadn't been released at retail yet, he was already in development. So they basically put him on a unique card, gave him a coin, so that he could trade it for some more furry boots on the market. And now you had a Yak Face, and he also came with a little glass there. Alright, so same thing is going on with the Gamorrean Guard. We're getting him re-released now on a single card as opposed to a box, and again, he's got that coin that's good for one pair of sandals on the open market. So why are they doing this? Why can't Haslab and Mattel and all these companies give us something really cool for the Tier 1 stretch and make it something we're actually going to, it's going to change our mind, if you will. Like, oh my gosh, I have to get ULA. Well, there's a basic accounting principle that overrides this, and it's basically fixed cost versus variable costs. So let me do a very high-level explanation. We're not going to get into, deep accounting here. But essentially, the difference between fixed costs and variable costs are things that a company can control. So a fixed cost is something like rent. The rent that they're going to pay for their office buildings or their factories, something that doesn't change. Every single month you pay the exact same amount. You can count on that bill. It's fixed. A variable cost is something that changes, something like the raw materials, right? The more figures you make, the more raw materials you have to buy. So if you make a lot more of something, well, that means you're going to have to procure a lot more raw materials in order to turn those into a figure. So, 50,000 figures versus 20,000. You're buying $30,000 worth of more raw materials. It's a variable cost. It changes based on sales. Rent does not. Rent will always be the exact same amount, at least until your rent goes up because your landlord does that. But, whatever your contract is, you can count on rent being the same. All right. So obviously companies have to make a profit. And I know there's people that feel companies shouldn't be making a profit. They should just be giving us these toys for free. I understand that, but that's just not the way the economy works, and it's not the way the free market and capitalism works. So a company has to make profit. They need to make profit because they have to pay their workers' salaries, their health care, their benefits, and obviously the golf lessons for the fat cat executives. No, I'm just kidding. Executives actually are usually very smart. All right, so the other thing to understand is what's called the contribution margin ratio, which is the total revenue minus variable cost divided by revenue. So let's look at this graph here. So the line at the top under sales, that represents the total sales. The green area represents the variable cost that can go up and down depending on how many sales you get. And the yellow area, the contribution, represents your fixed costs, more or less. So that's never going to change. You're always going to be paying your fixed costs, your rent, your salaries, that kind of thing. Although actually salaries can be a mixed variance, but let's not get too much into that. Let's just assume it's fixed. So as you get more sales, you can reallocate more money for development, for tooling, because you've now gone above and beyond your profit margin or your profit goal, which is why the later tiers for Haslab items unlock more tooling, because they've already now surpassed their profit goal. A company has to have a certain profit goal or they're not going to make the product because they have to pay those fixed costs, rent, salaries, etc., etc. So essentially, the contribution margin, it increases when sales increase. So think about every dollar increase in sales profits, increase the contribution margin. So as that green area increases because of increased sales, the variable costs go up, well, that means you now have more wiggle room to allocate tooling. But the yellow area, the fixed cost, the contribution margin, never changes. You're always going to have to pay that. So that's the bare minimum of profit you have to make to keep the lights on, more or less. So until they hit that, they can't allocate more tooling or more resources. And yes, I get it. I'm an adult collector too. I am a lifelong toy collector, but I've also worked in the toy industry. That's kind of the difference. And I get that we feel that toy companies owe us, but it's much more like hurdles, right? Like in a track meet, the first few hurdles are still going to be within the same contribution margin. You're not going to get to a higher profit until you have a significantly higher quota. That's why the later tiers tend to unlock tooling, and the first tier does not, because the first tier has not surpassed the fixed cost significantly. Does that make sense? That's why they have to come up with clever things like a packaging refresh. Now, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, but let's pretend I am, I would say that upcoming tiers in the future are going to have more tooling. Maybe we will get ULA. Maybe we will get, a bone or a rock or, Jedi Luke or, all sorts of other things, the Rancor Keeper. That's because as you surpass the profit goal and make essentially more money, you can then allocate more money to tooling that maintains that profit goal. And that profit goal has to be, established because, well, that's how companies work. And it really comes down to us managing our expectations. If we go into these Haslab or Mattel Creations projects thinking we're going to get all this new tooling at the first tier, it's just going to set us up for disappointment. It's much better to accept the fact that we're not going to get more tooling for tier unlocks until later tiers, not the first one. It's just how accounting works and how companies do business. So I hope this video kind of explained that in a logical way, not an emotional way or a way that's meant to offend anyone, because it's not. I'm just trying to explain. If you like this video, share it with others. Share it with other people who don't seem to understand this concept or need more information. It's what I love doing about this channel, is sharing the logic behind toy decisions from the time I've spent in the industry. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.